It's the pink season in Hong Kong, when people from the LGBT community are celebrating and raising awareness of their sexual identity. The city has in recent years become increasingly open-minded towards the sexual minority. But discrimination still exists, and to have a discrimination law remains a highly controversial subject. In this month's Hong Kong Inquirer, we take a look at whether Hong Kong is ready to legislate on discrimination based on sexual orientation. It's a Friday evening in Hong Kong, and a tour group is setting out in one of the city's most internationalized and prosperous areas. The theme, the history and culture of the gay community.
So today's tour, we are only going to cover Central and so on. But of course, Hong Kong gay history and culture is not limited to this area. That said, we are going to do some shopping or sightseeing. As in any tour, we have some shopping. So where are we actually going? We're actually going to a sex shop. Obviously, with the gay community, we know there are various NGOs like AIDS Concern, or they talk about sexual health. So we really talk about sex in a positive spin, and I think we should embrace it. And now we're going to embrace our sexuality with going to Pussycat. Okay? Yes, please.
Benita Chick is one of the tour guides. The tour is held once a month with about a dozen tourists each time. There are local and overseas tourists, from youngsters to 80-year-old gay couples.
Anybody seen those items before?
Each tour costs 380 Hong Kong dollars per person and lasts for about 2.5 hours, from sightseeing of sex-related venues to usual hangouts of gay people, and an introduction of some of the jargons used within the LGBT community.
So this is a Hong Kong slang that became popular on Golden Forum, okay? Referring to two men having an ambiguous relationship, not necessarily gay. Yes, he. Yeah.
Such a tour is only part of the growing number of happenings and activities in Hong Kong that aims to raise awareness of different sexual orientations.
I think there are certainly a lot more activities now. There are stuff like Pink Season, where they have like weekly events. There are like food and shoots, which is like a monthly gathering of LGBT people. And then there's the LGBT Film Festival, and then several gay bars with a lot of different themes. I think the expat community has a lot to do with it. There's a lot of quite affluent middle-class bankers or lawyers in the LGBT community, and they have the capacity to run those events.
One of the largest LGBT events, Pink Dot, was held this September. It's what the organizers called a diversity event, a carnival that welcomes not just the LGBT community, but families with kids. And it's sponsored by big corporations ranging from banks, internet giants, to car makers.
We have to go to West Kowloon, no choice, because we already exceeded the capacity limit of Temple Park.
So the first year in 2014, we had a turnout of 12,000 people. And last year was more than 15.5 thousand people. Pink Dot is a softer approach in terms of pushing and championing for LGBT rights, whereas Gay Pride is more on the hard approach, it's much more political. For us, it's a bit apolitical, and with the softer approach of like the concert, and this year we have carnival area, we have flea market as well, and F&B. It's a fun way for non-LGBT friends or family to know more about the community, because that's where they get to mingle with all of us and get to talk, to socialize, and to know us better.
The event has also been organized in such a way for homosexuals who are afraid of coming out of the closet to feel more comfortable with their sexual identity.
Okay, Belle 同埋 Shirley， 佢哋邊度結婚嘅咧 ？Belle 同埋 Shirley 喺 Vancouver 係嘛？結咗婚幾多年啊？2年啊 ？OK， 咁如果有朝一日香港可以通過同志婚姻嘅話，你哋會唔會再擺酒啊？
一定會，就算80歲都要嚟到。
係嘛 ？OK，and we all wish someday we don't really have to buy a ticket to get married somewhere, and we can do it in Hong Kong, our place, our home. Okay.
To look at it this way, I mean, especially over the last 5 years, there's been a lot of visibility in terms of LGBT in Hong Kong. Mostly because quite a number of very important and popular, public figures came out, and that's really, turn the whole LGBT thing from underground into something that, well, you don't really have to hide. That can be discussed in bright daylight. So we witnessed a very major kind of, public shift in terms of opinion. But at the same time, on the legal front, we are still at a standstill. We are still, being ripped away, from a lot of, very basic rights. We don't have gay marriage rights. We still don't have that social anti-discrimination law.
It's not even there at all. That's how bad it is.
There is a long list of rights that the international LGBT community are looking for. But in the more conservative societies in Asia, many are still just talking about a legislation that protects the sexual minority from being discriminated against. According to the International LGBTI Association, in Asia, only Nepal and Thailand have the legal protection on discrimination based on sexual orientation, while China's Taiwan and Macau both have some level of legislation to protect the sexual minority from being discriminated against in employment, education, and so on. But anti-discrimination legislation is still a highly controversial subject in Hong Kong. A survey conducted by the Chinese University of Hong Kong released earlier this year showed 55.7% of the Hong Kong people somewhat or completely agree to have anti-discrimination legislation, while 34.8% somewhat or completely disagreed.
我係認為呢，而家唔適宜用性傾向歧視法呢種方式去解決呢啲歧視嘅問題，因為我覺得佢只會火上加油，產生其他嘅問題。如果立咗性傾向歧視條例呢，按照而家嘅歧視法嗰個嘅 package， 亦都按照一啲同運團體所列出嚟嘅一啲嘅即係嗰啲嘅對性傾向歧視條例嗰啲嘅條款嚟睇呢，其實佢就會係全面禁制一啲反對同性戀嘅言論。
Professor Kwan cited an example in the United States in which a bakery owner in the state of Oregon was fined for $135,000 last year, violating anti-discrimination law after he declined to make a wedding cake for a same-sex couple.
咁我哋發覺呢啲條例其實係好辣，同埋呢係一下子係將嗰個嘅 pendulum 嗰個鐘擺咧揈到去另外一邊。其實佢係一個全面嘅。要強迫社會接受同性戀、同性婚姻、LGBT 意識形態，同埋係將唔贊成嘅人呢邊緣化之餘呢，更加隨時係控告甚至係懲罰。咁所以我覺得呢一個呢並唔係解決歧視嘅最好辦法。
Joe Pan disagrees with this argument.
我哋而家講緊唔係你冇自由去選擇中唔中意同性戀，支唔支持同志，而係講緊喺呢個社會裏邊有冇一啲嘅。去克制，唔好讓人去傷害其他同你唔同嘅人呢
Welcome， 大家好。
大家冇見過咁妖嘅牧師嘅係嘛？我都冇見過，我都係第一次見嘅啫。Wow, what a colourful collar you have! Are you really gay? Are you really a reference?
I am gay pastor 。大家好。
我喺07年、08年嘅時候就開始牧養同志嘅群體。咁喺我牧養嘅生涯裏邊呢，差唔多每個月呢，最少都有5-6個個案會走上嚟話俾我聽，佢哋係同志基督徒。咁但係牧師知道佢哋係有同性戀呢個性傾向嘅時候呢，就會用一啲理由或者係叫佢哋停止佢哋嘅侍奉工作。
Professor Kwan said it's arguable to say that it's discrimination for churches to fire those who hold different beliefs from that of the church.
咁但係我哋都係唔贊成歧視，但係我覺得呢啲應該係透過呢社會嗰個嘅教育大家唔同群體嗰個協商。而事實上面我哋睇過往而家香港嗰個嘅情況，係咪真係咁多歧視嘅情況呢？
Indeed, Hong Kong has become ever more friendly towards the LGBT community, especially the younger generation. A survey showed that nearly 92% of the people between 18 and 24 supported legislation on discrimination based on sexual orientation. So how widespread is such discrimination and how serious it is now?
So for example, me as a kind of like a tomboyish lesbian, since I was young, maybe since I was 6-7 years old when I have short hair, there will be some certain local women who will be yelling at me at very bad languages because of my appearance. They will be like 男人婆, 死男人頭, and say really bad language. And I'm sure there are other lesbians in Hong Kong have similar experience. But I think for some parts of the Hong Kong LGBTI community, especially for those who are lower income or who are Cantonese speaking, then they face a much more difficulty. Because when we think about the gay nightlife or something like that, it's very middle class, it's very 鬼佬, and people have the money to spend, and if they get really abused at work, they can hire a lawyer to fight for them. But for those poor people, maybe they have nobody to turn to. They might file a complaint to EOC, but that might take like 4 or 5 years before their voices are heard.
Even though the society had been opened up and being more friendly amongst young people, but many businesses still are held by older people, and discrimination can be quite serious.
Nao Chen has been providing assistance since 1998 for members of the sexual minority who encounter difficulties from domestic violence, discrimination at work or at schools, and emotional crisis.
Today I'm coming to the Stanley prison to visit an inmate. He's gay. He wrote me a letter and told me that he's bullied and discriminated. I'm coming to find out what's happening and what I can help. He's okay. There has been discriminative harassment continuously for a few months now. Mainly it's name calling about like faggot or something. Because those are minor things, he worries if making a complaint will make the situation more complicated. So at this point, he's just going to deal with that himself.
Nao Chen said even if complaints were filed to the Equal Opportunities Commission, the statutory body responsible for implementing Hong Kong's several discrimination ordinance, there's nothing that the institution can do because there's no law that deals with discrimination against people with different sexual orientation.
The most common kind of discrimination in many fields, for example, if they are civil servants, and I know many like people in disciplinary force, or school teachers, they commonly hear like negative comments on sexual minorities, and then they fear of coming out. And it was very clear to them that if their sexual orientation being found out, it will seriously affect their opportunities of promotion. A person, he was quite depressed when he met me. He told me that at his job, he'd been promoted 3 times in 2 years. But when his boss found out his sexual orientation, being gay, just instantly fired him. There's another like quite extreme dramatic story, but happened in Hong Kong. That person told me that when his boss found out he's being gay, then instantly fired him, and then request the entire team, like all his co-workers, to have HIV tests.
According to surveys, in the past 2 years, 50% of the LGBT community had been refused the provision of a service. 32% had experienced discrimination at work. And in a separate survey, 24% had depression. That's 6 times the number of the general population.
I asked Professor Kwan what if his children or his friends are gay and how he deals with it.
嗱，其實我舉個簡單例子，有一次11:09個電話響起，佢最近發覺個仔就係同性戀，咁點做咧咁樣？後尾我約咗佢出去飲茶，咁第一個説話我同佢講就話：你翻去同個仔講，無論你嘅性傾係點樣，你將來改唔改到都好，你永遠都係我個仔，我哋永遠都會無條件嘅去愛你。呢個就係我嘅態度同埋立場。
But Professor Kwan still objects anti-discrimination legislation, saying that even for today's most conservative church, there are very few people who hold extreme hatred towards the LGBT community. He said what the LGBT advocates claimed are exaggerated.
我相信冇一個人話舉個牌，或者主流教會都唔會舉牌話我哋要歧視同性戀，我哋要歧視佢哋。我相信冇一個基督徒會噉做呢一樣嘢。咁但係點解唔去立法呢？
The debate can go on and on. Professor Kwan said the general public and the government can consider having a constitutional amendment in the existing law, such as adding clauses in the employment ordinance that would protect the LGBT community from being discriminated in the workplace.
But we're still just talking about the discrimination issues, whereas the subjects of same-sex marriage, the financial benefits that come with it, and children's adoption for same-sex couples are even more controversial. The question remains whether the Hong Kong society will become more open-minded towards the LGBT community in the years to come.
I just want to ask for something very basic. It's called anti-discrimination. We don't have that law in Hong Kong right now. Of course, gay marriage, same-sex marriage, transgender rights, of course, those are all important. But I think if we cannot even talk about anti-discrimination, all these are very far.